possible. When they came onto the ship, they used overwhelming violence. Clinton had a gun with live ammo put in his face and told that he would be shot in the head if he didn't move. He was blocking the wheelhouse, and they just used the most overwhelming violence. And when I came up, when I had hidden the tape and I came up, there was one commando in the wheelhouse who was a bit younger. He might have been about 18, 19, and he was like, sit over there, and we protested that as best we could. But then I said to him, I just said, look, you're going to go home, you're going to take off that mask, you're going to look at yourself, and I just know that it's not going to sit right with you. How could it? I said, and I'm going to blame your government before I blame you as a person, but if you can at least reflect on what's happened, we'll forgive you on a personal level, because and I said, I would just ask you to research about the people in Israel doing work like Gush Shalom, the peace blocks in Israel, and if you can consider not bearing arms again, like I've already forgiven you in a way. And your man nodded, and they were very inhuman in their behaviour, but they were scared as well. They didn't know what they were doing. And since then, the commanders have written to the government in Israel going, why were we asked to carry out what should have been a policing mission? Because that's what the Israeli spokesperson in Ireland has said. Oh, but it is like if a policeman stops somebody and asks them for information and they comply, then nothing happens to them, when she was justifying the deaths on the Mafia Marmara. But if she stops a policeman, if she stops another person and he fights back, then anything can happen, and it's very regrettable. But you said that the commandos were acting like police, but they were terrorists. They came in to terrorise us and shock us, and that's what they did. They brought us into Ashdod. One man, aged 80, repeatedly asked to use the bathroom. Now, he'd gone once, but this is just an example of, maybe it won't reach the headlines, but it's very humiliating and embarrassing for everyone. He asked to go to the bathroom, he goes to the bathroom once. He asked, and later on he's like, I need to go to the bathroom again. And for some reason they just ignore him until he wets himself. And it's just, for a man of 80, it's just, for anybody, it's just really demeaning. And that was the small little things that they would use to try and grind you down. When they got us into Ashdod, we all linked arms. We had been promised embassy official and lawyers, and we said, okay, we want to see them now. Let them come onto the ship. They said, no, you have to go off port and then you'll see them. So they just lied about everything just to try and get us to comply. But we said, no, you promised us, and we're going to stay here until they come onto the ship, and we linked arms. And how they responded is they went for Anne, who's 65, and David, who's 80, went to get them first. Going for the older, more vulnerable people, supposedly. But when they did go for Anne, we all kind of shouted and said, leave her alone, because they were just really picking on her and like manhandling her, two commandos. So we all said, leave her alone, and I raised my voice too, and I said, do not touch her, take your hands off her. She's a former US colonel, and if she's injured, there will be consequences for you personally. And I said, we have your numbers, so, and one commander responded by putting a taser to my head. And I hadn't seen him before, but he looked really gung-ho, and I had absolutely every reason to believe he would have pulled that taser had I breathed another word. So I had a taser to my face, which doesn't really happen in a show very often, and you're just like, what do I do here? Where did this come up in the Lonely Planets guide? But so I decided I don't want to get tasered in the head. Everyone else wanted to protest and stay as possible, but I just felt as a member of the crew, maybe if I said I will leave the ship if that commando sheathed his weapon and leaves the ship, and they said okay, and I was one of the first to leave. As soon as I left the boat, we were like a circus, and they had loads of the military there lined up taking photos for their private collection. And as soon as I hit the dock, I was shouting, I demand to see an Irish embassy official, I demand to see an Irish embassy official. They're threatening to taser people on the boat, they're threatening to taser people on the boat, as loud as I could. And if you do look at the footage, you can see the visual, but with no audio. They doctored absolutely everything to try and give any sort of hint that any sort of impression that somehow they were somehow justified in what they did. But they terrorised us the whole way through. They asked me for my passport, and I said, no, I can't give it to you. I said, and then they saw it, and I said, is that your passport? And I said, no, it's not. I said, what do you mean it's not yours? And I said, well, look at the back. I said, note 1 says this remains the property of the Irish Minister for Foreign Affairs, and note 5 says this passport is a valuable document. It should not be allowed to pass into the possession of an unauthorised person. You're an unauthorised person. I'd love to give it to you, but I can't. I'm sorry. Even if I wanted to, I can't. So I'm sorry. And, you know, using the letter of the law to defend myself. And to that they responded by marching me over to a tent and threatening a cavity search. It's a lot less than what other people go through on a day-to-day basis. And that's their automatic reaction, was to show any bit of resistance. So you can imagine if you're an anonymous Palestinian behind closed walls, what can actually happen to you. But we were put on a paddy wagon. We had heard that there were some casualties. The number, we were unsure of the number. We were brought to the jail and got into the prison. And it was all very menacing still, until people from the Splendori and the Gaza and the Mavi Marmara and other ships started coming in, and we started talking and finding out what had happened. And we were shocked, of course. People had carried the dead bodies, and a lot of people were very traumatized by the whole thing, of course. And we spent the first night there hoping that we'd get to see our embassy officials, and we had demanded that straight away. But as soon as we were in the common area together, I can't remember if it was the first evening or the next day, we formed a committee. And in fairness to people like Fintan and others, we formed a very effective committee very soon, and there was a member of each nationality, or at least who spoke one of the languages, who was there to ask people what their demands were. And we asked for the governor of the prison to come down. We said, okay, you're the governor, Shalom. Said, we're your prisoners, we're political prisoners, we've been kidnapped. But in the meantime, you can put requests to us, because they were trying to bark orders at us. It's like, you can put requests to us and we'll entertain them, we'll get back to you through the committee. But in the meantime, we're going to put forward some demands to you. First of all, we need consular access, we need to speak to our lawyers, and we need to phone to let our families know that we haven't been killed, because we know some people have. But anyway, just to hurry up, I was given a legal arraignment. We all went to see a judge, or not all of us, but most of us, and I said, he asked me my name, and I said, I'll tell you my name. I'm Fiachra Luain. I was on Challenger 1, I was second mate. I'm not going to cooperate with you anymore. If the question is, do I accept deportation? I don't. And I'd like the chance to, contest this in your legal system. Thanks very much. And I say he's a judge, but he was in this tiny cubicle with a laptop and a sandwich at his elbow. It wasn't really judicial setting. But he gave me a document, and I brought it. The Irish embassy people were still there. They had a translation. Said, okay, well, you've just made sure you're going to be in prison for another 96 hours. And, are you sure you're okay with this? And other people did too. I said, yeah, if we get the opportunity to win this legal battle in the short term, that'd be great, or even just to challenge them. But so I thought, with this document, then I'll definitely, it would be some sort of protection as well. The following day, we were all processed out of there. People were offered deportation. Some people signed under protest. Some people didn't sign at all. Some people did sign. But people were taken to Bingoreen Airport. Myself and Ken O'Keefe were left, and we wanted to challenge our deportation in court. And we were respectful. And in fairness to Governor Shalom, he was, he came across as being, respecting our decision. But half an hour after everyone left, they came into our cell, and they would have beaten us up had we could see it by their body language they were coming to get us out.